The first thing I want you to do, before we dig into this, is subscribe to Iron Age Instincts, because this channel exists for people who genuinely care about the forgotten knowledge that shaped how ordinary men and women endured the hardest years in human history. And this story, this one right here, deserves your full attention for the next minute. During World War II, thousands of soldiers and civilians survived brutal cold not because of heavy wool blankets or advanced gear, but because of a completely overlooked insulator that most people today walk past without realizing its power. This wasn't glamorous, it wasn't military issued, and it didn't come with a label. It was born from necessity, learned through hardship, and preserved only by those who understood the physics of survival better than the textbooks did. This forgotten layer kept people alive in freezing barns, makeshift shelters, trenches, and ruined cities, and it still outperforms modern blankets under the right conditions. You won't find this in your average survival guide or wartime documentary, but it's one of the most effective thermal strategies ever used by civilians under occupation or soldiers on the move. The insulator that, outperformed blankets was actually the oldest, simplest material. Straw, layered with intention. Straw wasn't treated as just filler or farm waste during the Second World War. In regions like Eastern Europe, Scandinavia, Germany, and, parts of the Pacific, it became the primary survival tool for anyone trying to endure those cold nights with little more than what they could gather. What made straw so effective was, honestly, its ability to trap air. Every stalk, every hollow fibre held tiny air pockets that modern outdoor companies still try to replicate with synthetic insulation. But unlike blankets, which compress and lose warmth, straw expands, shifts, and keeps those pockets open. This wasn't random use. People understood how much straw was required, how to layer it, and where it performed best. Whole families slept on straw beds that acted like natural mattresses, creating distance between the body and freezing ground. Soldiers stuffed straw into their clothing when winter gear ran out. Resistance fighters lined walls with it in abandoned buildings. It wasn't pretty and it wasn't comfortable by modern standards, but comfort didn't matter. Survival did. And nothing beat straw when wool was scarce or frozen solid. Understanding why straw work better than blankets really helps us grasp the physics of survival. It's all about how different materials handle heat and moisture, and, sometimes the simplest things can make the biggest difference. Blankets fail not because they lack warmth, but because they rely on thickness and stability. The moment they get wet, compressed, or torn, their insulating value just drops sharply. It's a tough lesson, honestly, and one that cost many dearly. Straw, on the other hand, tolerates moisture better, drains quickly, and holds its structure even when partially frozen. The air trapped inside each stalk is, in fact, what keeps heat in. It's a humble solution, Yet, in harsh conditions, that's what mattered most. In the letters and diaries from the Second World War, you'll find, well, countless references to sleeping in the straw. It wasn't, some romantic image. It was really just an honest acknowledgement that straw meant warmth, even when the world outside was absolutely lethal. In practice, folks would always start by layering straw thickly on the ground first. That bottom layer acted like a thermal barrier, right? Then more straw was piled on top of the body and shaped around it, almost like a cocoon. The layering really mattered. Open, loose straw would circulate warm air, while tightly packed straw, well, it lost its insulating value. Experienced survivors knew to fluff it by hand before resting, stirring it just like you'd aerate soil. The goal wasn't, softness. It was air retention. Modern survivalists can use this same principle today. If you ever find yourself in a cold environment with limited gear, whether in the wilderness after a power outage or during unexpected weather, gathering natural dry material and creating a thick insulating layer can, honestly, outperform any thin emergency blanket. It's the same principle used in winter debris shelters. WWII. Civilians didn't invent the method, but they mastered it through necessity. During the Second World War, civilians elevated straw insulation into a complete survival system, not just a single trick, One of the most overlooked aspects of this practice was combining straw with body heat management. People would frequently rotate positions, especially in groups, to keep those air layers moving and prevent moisture build-up. They would shake out straw between uses because even a little dampness could spread over hours. In barns or outbuildings, straw wasn't simply piled in a corner. It was arranged with deliberate spacing. People often created raised straw beds to keep moisture from creeping upward. And in trench shelters, soldiers stuffed straw behind supports or braces to insulate entire walls. There's a practical application here for modern scenarios, honestly. If you rely on any natural insulation, leaf litter, pine boughs, straw or hay, keep moisture management in mind. The old wartime tactic was to create 3 layers: a bottom lift layer, the main insulating bed, and the top covering layer. This system reduced heat loss no matter the temperature. The same layering works indoors if you ever have to survive a heating failure. A raised sleeping surface with natural insulation underneath mimics what World War II families did nightly in unheated buildings. Straw proved its worth because it was a renewable, expandable insulator that didn't degrade under hardship. Blankets, especially in wartime, suffered from wear, exposure, and freezing conditions. Straw didn't. If it broke down, you replaced it. If it smelled, you aired it out. If it got wet, you spread it thin, until it dried. This adaptability is part of why it surpassed wool blankets when conditions were relentlessly harsh. For historians and survivalists today, the lesson is straightforward insulation that works with nature, not against it, outlives gear that relies on perfect conditions. Straw wasn't technology. It was technique. What we learn from this forgotten insulator is that, well, survival is about mastery, not equipment. The people who used straw effectively weren't trained soldiers or survival experts. They learned through experience, tradition, and, shared hardship. And their methods still work because physics doesn't change. Air traps heat, natural fibres hold structure, smart layering wins against raw cold. If you want more deep historical knowledge that still applies today, subscribe to Iron Age Instincts and share this video with someone who appreciates real forgotten survival wisdom. Let's keep these lessons alive so they're never lost again.